Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of In My Honest Opinion. This weekend is the All-Star Weekend and we saw Sidney Crosby and Team Metro win the entire competition. Let's take a look at what the standings were like around the league heading into this weekend. I pretty much have a good idea of what the standings are like in the NHL, but I'm just going to pull up my phone, go through the standings, kind of take a look at where people are at, and give a comment or two on why I think people are where they're at right now. There's a couple of really interesting ones. I got some good points I want to bring up, so let's get right on into it. So to begin, we're going to look at the East. That's what I'm more familiar with, being a Leafs fan. I kind of know what the Atlantic is and how that's all unfolding right now, so let's pull up the standings right now. So the first thing you notice when you open up these standings is, wow, Tampa Bay is running away with this league. Tampa Bay is sitting at 76 points on the season, and that's 5 more points ahead of Calgary, which have 2 more games played than them. So they're above and beyond just running away with the President's Trophy right now. But as we've seen in years past, the President's Trophy doesn't always lead to success. Now looking at the Atlantic, after Tampa Bay, we have Toronto in second and Montreal at third. Montreal is interesting. Toronto's pretty typical to see at second. They honestly could have been lower with the slump they've been on. It was my first video like this. They've been on a bit of a slump recently. Got that win against Washington. They kind of don't have as many points as they could have had, but they're probably around where they should be. A little on pace with what they were at last year. Montreal being in third is kind of a big surprise for me. We know Boston didn't have the start of the season that we thought Boston would have. They're still a good team. They're not playing as good as they could be right now. But Montreal has really turned it on this season. Everyone was really curious about what Montreal was going to be able to do this season. They still had Carey Price, the best goaltender in the world when he's healthy. But there was a lot of questions up front, and we've seen the emergence of some young stars. Max Domi has fit in awesome in Montreal. He's been a huge impact for that team. So I'm interested to see if Montreal can kind of maintain that pace that they've been on so far this season. Now dropping to 4th place past Montreal, we have Boston. Definitely thought Boston would be a little higher up in the standings. Montreal has 2 games in hand and they're only 2 points ahead. So Boston's on pace to actually pass them in the standings after this break ends. Look for Boston to make that push for 3rd place, or even 2nd place, as we saw last year. They ended up getting 2nd place past the Leafs. Boston's probably a better team than they've been playing like, and I'm sure it'll come together soon. Now at 5th place past Boston, we have the Buffalo Sabres. And if you remember correctly, about a month and a half ago, the Buffalo Sabres were in 1st place in the NHL. So after that crazy start to the season, I think they've lost like 8 out of their last 10 games or something, so they've kind of fallen off the ropes a little bit. We knew that they were going to have a lot better of a season than they had last year. They got Jeff Skinner in the offseason, adding Rasmus Dahlin is a big pickup for them, but nobody expected them to be 1st place in the NHL a month ago. Nobody expects them to kind of be any better than they are right now, to be honest. It was a pretty big Cinderella story for them at the start of the season, so it would be nice to see them keep going if you're a Buffalo fan, but ultimately I just don't think they're going to keep it up. It'd be nice if they made the playoffs, but I wouldn't count on it this year. 1 spot below the Buffalo Sabres, we find the Florida Panthers, who I'm kind of disappointed. I made some bold statements about them at the start of the season. I thought they were going to be quite better than they have been. I know goaltending's been an issue for them. They got Evgeny Dodonov, Mike Hoffman. That acquisition was huge for them. They've been making a couple splashes. Frank Vetrano has looked awesome for the team, so they have a bright future ahead of them, but they've been disappointing this year, to be honest. I don't see them making the playoffs anymore. And with the last 2 spots in the Atlantic, we find the Detroit Red Wings. That's no surprise there. We kind of expected Detroit to be a bottom barrel team. And FSCU hasn't been as great as he should be. Martin Frk has looked all right, but Dylan Larkin has looked next level this year. They really got something to look forward to in that kid. He's looking excellent so far. Arguably the fastest player in the NHL. The last player not named Connor McDavid, who won the fastest skater competition at the All-Star game and those competitions, was actually Dylan Larkin. And he skated a faster time in the last 3 years than McDavid has. So it's a toss-up. Who knows who wins in a foot race, but the kid's got speed. And lastly, the Ottawa Senators. Everyone knew it was going to be a really rough one for them after this offseason, losing Erik Karlsson, losing Mike Hoffman. Those are a couple big names to lose. They've had some good storylines this year, though. Thomas Chabot is looking like an all-star defenseman for them. Maxime Lajoie is another name that has been good earlier on in the season. Mark Stone has still been sick. There's some things to look forward to in the future, but as of right now, it's not a good time to be an Ottawa Senators fan, especially that Colorado has their 1st round pick. That's not good for them. Not lottery protected. If they win the 1st overall pick, they don't get it. That hurts. Now heading into the Metro, this is one that I'm a lot more excited to talk about. In 1st place, we have the New York Islanders. After losing John Tavares in the offseason, the New York Islanders are in 1st place in the Metro. Now, the one thing that's even more interesting about the Islanders being in first place, if you look at the advanced stats, Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss have been the luckiest goalies this season. Now, I know luck is kind of a hard advanced stat to go on, and how can you predict luck? But as far as expected save percentages and expected goals against kind of thing, however they were expected to perform projections kind of thing, Lehner and Greiss are top of the board 1 and 2. They've been the best in the NHL at exceeding their expectations. So that's great for the Islanders, a team that really needed a big comeback after firing their GM and losing their franchise player this offseason. Matt Barzal has come back and had another huge season to prove to everyone that he is an elite player. Myself included, I might have had some doubts about Barzal and his ridiculous point season last year. I thought it might have been from playing with Tavares a little bit. But he's showing to everyone right now that it's not from Tavares. He's an all-star player. He's just going to get better and better as he gets older. So that's really good for the franchise to have a center like that with that player. Dropping down second place, we have the reigning Cup champs, the Washington Capitals. And they've been on a huge skid lately. We just saw Toronto smack them right before the break. They've lost, I think, 7 out of their past 8. Holtby hasn't looked great, but they're going to turn it around a little bit. Kuznetsov has kind of been off. Ovi's been on an absolute tear. That man's never going to quit slapping pucks. Ultimately, I think Washington is where they're supposed to be.
Look at Holtby with that little puppy in the cup. How awesome is that?
Next, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets taking third place in the Metro. They better hope that they keep on playing as good as they have been, because losing Panarin and Bobrovsky this offseason is going to crush them. Looking down at the fourth spot, we got the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. At the beginning of the season, I went out on a limb and said that this would be the first time in 12 years that the Penguins missed the playoffs. I'm hoping that they miss the playoffs. They got a couple games in hand on the guys that are over top of them, so they have the opportunity to jump them. They're still a hell of a team. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Kessel, almost said Fleury, Matt Murray. They got an awesome team. I expect them to make the playoffs, but bold statement, they won't. One spot below the Penguins at 5th, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. Just watched them play the other night, actually. One takeaway from that game is that line of Aho, Niederreiter, and Williams looked awesome. To be honest, I thought Carolina was going to be a lot better than they are this year. The goaltending hasn't been there for them, but they got some superstar potential looking forward. Svechnikov is going to be a beast in a few years. And like I said, Aho is incredible. That Niederreiter trade was a steal for him too. However, I did think they were going to perform a little bit better than they have been. Next, we have the New York Rangers. They started off pretty hot. Everyone thought they wouldn't do great, even when they sent out that letter last year saying that they were on a rebuild. Lundqvist had a great start to the season. He's been falling off a little bit. I think they'll be better now that Pavel Buchnevich is back in the lineup after having a wrist injury earlier on in the season. They got a couple of good prospects in the system. Look for them to make a big bounce back in the future. But this year's kind of a wash for him. Now, places 7 and 8 are very interesting to me because I thought these teams would be a lot better than they have been. To be honest, I thought the Metro was just a powerhouse, and maybe that's why they're losing so many games. But we have the Philadelphia Flyers and the New Jersey Devils. The Jersey Devils might have just been a nice little story from last year. They had a great season. It's nice to see those young guys perform well, but they obviously need to be better as they're last in their division. But the Philadelphia Flyers, I don't know what's been going on with them. Their goaltending has been absurd. You better hope that Carter Hart comes in and plays huge for them in the next few years. Gostisbehere and Provorov have not been the big 2 defensemen like you thought they'd be. Gostisbehere looks days and days gone past his 50-point season. Claude Giroux's still playing good, but ultimately those secondary guys aren't doing as well as they should be. I think Philadelphia's biggest issue is their goaltending. Now over in the West, let's start with the Central. At the top right now, we see the Winnipeg Jets and Nashville Predators tied for first place. However, the Predators have played 4 more games than the Jets have, so the Jets definitely have the upper edge on that one. I don't think there's any surprises there. They're a crazy battle, 1 and 2. 2 absolutely brilliant young teams who are going to be duking it out there in the Central for years to come. I think we all remember that matchup they had in the playoffs last year. That was awesome. I'd love to see a repeat of that. They're pretty much locked for 1 and 2 this year and there, I'd say. In third place, we have the Minnesota Wild. That's kind of a different one, you know, the Wild, they're third in their division in a playoff spot right now, but nobody really talks about the Wild. They're kind of just a nobody team to everybody for some reason.
Gonna piss some people off with that one.
Well, all the Wild fans? How many Wild fans do you know?
0.
Exactly, there you go. I'm going to keep that. That was recording. I'm keeping that in it. Next up, we have the Dallas Stars. I'd really love to see them make the playoffs. I think Ben and Sagan are 2 great players. Miro Heiskanen has had a fantastic season too. I love watching him play. Super dynamic with the puck. But ultimately, I think it'd be awesome for Ben and Sagan to get back at the owner after he called them out the way he did, saying they weren't performing well enough. I mean, they probably weren't, but come on, get off the guy's back. That's super unprofessional. What a terrible way to approach a situation. After the Dallas Stars, we have the Colorado Avalanche, who probably should be higher up in the standings with the unreal line that they have with McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. Rantanen is exceptional. He said he's not going to talk his contract until after the season's done. Good for him. He had 84 points in 81 games last year, and he's just going off this season. He's only going to keep on producing that much, but since he's playing with McKinnon and Landeskog, he's going to be worth a lot of money. Colorado's kind of got to figure out their backhand stuff, though, if they want to be a nice playoff team for years to come. Next, we have two teams who I thought probably should have been doing a little better than they have been in the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks. St. Louis is kind of a tough one because they just made that big trade for Ryan O'Reilly in the offseason, another person Buffalo lost. And you thought they would be doing a little bit better than they have been, but they haven't been able to pull it together. Tarasenko's having an off season. They missed out on Pietrangelo for a lot of the year. Kind of a disappointing season so far from St. Louis. And even more of a disappointing season from Chicago. Patrick Kane is going off. DeBrincat is having another good season. But beyond that, the team isn't playing well. Their goaltending situation is something to be desired for sure. Yeah, things aren't looking great in Chicago right now. Hopefully they can get a couple prospects in the cupboard and look good for the future. And finally, our last division to cover is the Pacific, which is a very interesting division to talk about. I think all the way through from first place to eighth place, there's kind of an interesting story behind the team, so I got a lot to say about this division. Calgary having an incredible year. Johnny Hockey showing that he is just next level all-star. He's having an incredible season so far. That line of Monahan and Lindholm has been popping off so far. Look for them to keep it up. Matthew Tkachuk has been incredible. Nice little feisty player. I love the way he plays, getting in people's grills, making them mad. Almost like a better version of Nazem Kadri, to be honest, and I'm a huge Naz fan, so you gotta respect that. Although I'll never like Marchand, that guy's a rat. Hopefully they keep on lighting it up the way they have been. The San Jose Sharks. I love talking about the Sharks because they're in second place in their division, 29-16-7 on the season, and their goaltending has been horrid. The team's save percentage this season has been under 900, and they're still second in their division. They have an absolute powerhouse up front, and that's not even that. Brent Burns is leading the team in points right now. He's going off. Timo Meier has emerged as another elite player on that team. Pavelski, Couture, and Hurdle are all having great seasons. After acquiring Erik Karlsson, he started slow, but he's turning it up now. They just drafted Ryan Merkley first round this offseason. He looks like a very promising player if he kind of keeps his off-ice issues away from it. Ultimately, if this team could get some better goaltending, they would be competing for number one in the NHL. They're a really good roster, getting a little old, but so good. Honestly, expect Doug Wilson to make a big splash at this trade deadline. I think they're going to go for it this year. Like I said, they're getting a little old. And Wilson's been known to make those big moves, so watch for the San Jose Sharks at the deadline. Next up, third place in the Pacific, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. Another good story coming off the crazy Cup final run they had last year. Don't expect them to go back to the Cup finals this year. However, they still have some great players who are going to play good for them for the rest of the season. Expect them to make the playoffs, but I don't think there's any way they repeat the run they had last year. Fleury could drag them there. He's that good of a goalie, number one in the NHL right now, but I don't think it's likely. Now, dropping off from third place to fourth place, the rest of the Pacific is pretty bad, to be honest. There's a pretty steep drop-off in points, and I don't expect any of these teams to make a comeback, but it's all pretty interesting why they are where they are, so let's get into it. Fourth place in the Pacific, we have the hometown Vancouver Canucks. These are shot from Vancouver, so this is the hometown Canucks. They've honestly had a better season than I think most people expected them to. A lot of people thought they were going to be a bottom barrel team, but a lot of people didn't know how good Elias Pettersson was going to be. Holy, that kid has been awesome this year. He's going to be so good for years to come. I think a lot more than any Canucks fans could have ever expected out of him. I think that's a really good story for them. They've got a couple of really good prospects in the cover right now. Getting Quinn Hughes last year was huge. Oliu Levy should be better than he has been. Playing good in Utica this year, though. They made that trade for Josh Levo, and he's fit in really nicely on that team. I'll be honest, I want the Canucks to get Jack Hughes so bad. I think that would be awesome for Quinn and Jack to both be on the same team, to replace the Sedins and the two brothers to lead Vancouver, along with Elias Pettersson. There's so much good coming in Vancouver, but just for the sake of getting Jack Hughes, please don't keep it up this year. Go Canucks, but after this year. Following the Canucks, we have the Anaheim Ducks, who have been terrible this season. They just lost 12 games in a row or something. However, they have been without Corey Perry. John Gibson has looked great. Just goes to show that they got him on a great contract. If he can stay healthy, we know he's a bit of a band-aid. I don't really know what else to say about the Anaheim Ducks. I don't expect them to make a playoff push. They got a couple good prospects, but nothing too flattering. Ultimately, I think they should just be going for a good draft spot this year. Following the Ducks, we have the Coyotes, who honestly I thought would be better. I know I've said that with a lot of teams so far, but I thought the Coyotes would be better than they have been. Galchenyuk hasn't looked as good as he should have been, I think. It's a different story, I think, if they have Antti Raanta for the full season. He's been injured, and he looked excellent at the end of last season. I think he could be a big player for this team. Give him another year for Dylan Strome to get up in the lineup. Jacob Chikrin having another dominant season. Christian Dvorak. All these young guns are playing big roles for this team right now, and they're all really young. Lawson Krause, another good one. So ultimately, a couple years down the road, Arizona's going to be a sick team to watch, but this year it's just not there for them. Dropping down to Edmonton, just fired Chiarelli. You might not have seen my last video on that, but I kind of go over a lot of what I think about the Oilers and where they are right now. You can go check out that if you want. Ultimately, write the season off, go for a high draft pick. And last, and I don't want to say certainly not least, because they might be the least, the LA Kings. A very old core with some washed up players. They made that Hagelin trade that I don't really understand. Dustin Brown is still on that awful contract. Ultimately, I don't know what to say about the Kings other than they got Kopitar. And you know what sucks even worse is one of their highly touted prospects, Gabe Vilardi, might not even be able to play hockey again because of a back injury. Pray for him. He was expected to be a big player in this organization for years to come. Jonathan Quick is still there. What do I say about the Kings? I guess all I have to say about the Kings is they're last in the Pacific. I don't have anything else to say about that. So that's pretty well all I have to say about that. I think it's pretty interesting, some teams where they are right now. There's some really good stories like the San Jose Sharks and their crazy, terrible save percentage and how good they're doing. And on the other end, a team like the New York Islanders playing as good as they are after losing a franchise player. Everyone thought they wouldn't be this good. That being said, we're just a little past the halfway point. There's still a lot of hockey to be played. Teams are still going to flip around in the standings. This isn't going to be how the playoffs go. But either way, I'm really looking forward to how this season plays out. Well, I think that's actually all I have for this one this time. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This has been another episode of In My Honest Opinion with Radiuk, and I will see you next time.